The colony on planet Verine 6 was quiet that evening. Gray clouds hung heavy in the sky and soft acid rain began to fall, sizzling gently on metal roofs. Most colonists stayed inside, avoiding the weather. Only one man walked the muddy trail, near the outer cliffs. Callan, a young human who lived alone at the edge of the colony. Callan was a builder, known for fixing old things and creating new ones from scraps. That day he had gone out to collect parts from a broken transport pod that had crashed months ago, but he found something else instead. As he walked past a tall outcrop of stone, he saw movement, a figure huddled against the rock wall, shivering in the rain. At first he thought it was an animal, but as he stepped closer he saw the truth. It was a woman, not human. Her skin was light violet, her hair silver and tangled. She wore what looked like a long robe, now torn and soaked. Her eyes, large, dark, and shining, watched him with fear. She was clearly an alien, but Callan didn't know which species. She didn't speak. She just curled tighter into herself as if expecting him to shout or push her away. But Callan didn't do that. He slowly removed his waterproof coat and held it out to her. "You'll get sick out here," he said gently. "Take this." She hesitated, then reached out with trembling hands and accepted the coat. Her fingers were long and delicate. She wrapped it tightly around herself but still said nothing. Callan looked around. No patrols were nearby, no cameras either. The colony had strict rules. Unauthorized aliens were to be reported immediately. But he couldn't leave her here. Something about her felt different. She didn't look dangerous. She looked lost. Alone. "I know a place not far from here," Callan said. "It's not much, but it's dry and warm." She didn't answer, but when he turned and walked a few steps, she slowly followed. The walk was short. Callan led her to an old storage shed he had turned into a workroom. It stood just off the cliffs, half hidden by rocks and low bushes. Inside, it was dry and he had a small heater, a sleeping mat, and basic supplies. "Sit," he said softly, pointing to the mat. She obeyed, carefully sinking down, eyes still on him. He took out a sealed food packet, one of his spares, and handed it to her. "It's human food, but you might be able to eat it." She opened it carefully, sniffed it, then took a small bite. Her expression didn't change, but she kept eating. As she ate, Callan sat across from her and watched the rain outside. It fell in sheets now, painting the glass in streaks. The woman finished the food and leaned back, her breathing slowing. She looked tired. Very tired. "What's your name?" he asked. She pointed to herself. "Sailari," she said quietly, her voice melodic and strange. "Sailari," he repeated. "I'm Callan." For a moment she just looked at him, as if trying to understand what kind of person he was. Then she gave him the smallest nod. That night, Sailari slept on the mat, and Callan sat by the heater wondering what to do. He knew the rules. He should report her to the colony office, but something deep inside told him not to. She wasn't a criminal. She wasn't dangerous. She was just displaced. In the past year, more aliens had started showing up near human colonies, refugees from fallen planets, victims of war, or those who had been cast out by the Galactic Assembly. Most humans didn't trust them. The Assembly made it sound like they were dangerous, lawless beings. But Callan didn't believe that. Not anymore. The next morning, he gave her a clean blanket, a fresh food pack, and helped her clean up. She said, very little, but there was something in her eyes. Respect. Maybe even a hint of hope. He knew he couldn't let her stay in the workshop forever. It wasn't safe. Drones sometimes scanned the area. Patrols came by once a week, so he made a decision. "I'm going to build you something better," he said. Sailari tilted her head. "A shelter," Callan said. "Hidden, warm, safe. You shouldn't have to sleep on a cold mat." She didn't answer, but after a moment she reached out and touched his hand. Her fingers were light and cool. It was her way of saying thank you, and for Callan that was enough. The next morning the skies were still cloudy, but the rain had stopped. Mist rolled gently across the cliffs, hiding the sharp edges of the rocks and softening the view of the colony below. Callan stood outside his workshop with a piece of metal in one hand and a plan forming in his mind. Scifi stood nearby, wrapped in the coat he had given her. She was quiet as always, but her eyes followed him carefully, watching his every move. Callan pointed toward a large stone ridge near the cliff. "There," he said. "I'll build it there. The drones don't scan too deep into that part. And the wind hides sound. No one will find you." Scifi said nothing, but a faint sound came from her throat, something like a soft hum. Callan guessed it was her version of agreement. He got to work. From his storage area, he collected scrap metal panels, old solar fabric, and insulation foam. Everything was old, but still usable. Callan wasn't rich, but he had tools, skill, and a strong will to help. He started by building a foundation from rock and mud, packed tightly between metal braces. Then he cut the panels to form a curved roof, something that could hold against Varine's strong winds. It wasn't big, just enough space for one person to sleep, sit, and stay dry. But it would be safe. Scifi helped in small ways. She gathered dry branches for support beams and held tools while Callan worked. Sometimes she made soft musical sounds like a song with no words. It was peaceful, and Callan found that it helped him focus. While working, Callan asked simple questions. "Where are you from? What happened to your ship? Why did you come here?" At first, Scifi just shook her head or stayed silent. But slowly, a few answers came. "Home was far, light years," she said in broken English. "Gone now, burned." Callan nodded. He didn't push for more. A few days passed, and the shelter took shape. It had a narrow entrance, a hidden flap door made from camo fabric, and a small heater powered by a broken drone battery Callan repaired. He even built a small water collector using metal pipes and filters so she wouldn't need to leave to drink. One evening, as the sun dipped below the rocky horizon and the air turned orange and gold, Callan sat on a crate beside the shelter. Scifi came out and sat beside him, wrapped in a blanket he had sewn from old colony uniforms. "You didn't have to help me," she said slowly. Callan looked at her. "Maybe not, but no one helped me when I first came here either. I know how it feels." She turned to him. "You are different from others. Most fear us, push us away." Callan smiled a little. "Maybe I'm just too stubborn to be scared." Scifi laughed softly. It was the first time he had heard that sound from her. It was strange and beautiful, like wind chimes mixed with a bird's song. That night she moved into the shelter. Callan watched from a distance, making sure everything worked. Inside, Scifi lit the heater and laid down on the mat he had made, for her. She looked peaceful, her eyes closing gently. The next morning, Callan returned with more food packs and some tools to reinforce the roof. He found Scifi already awake, humming to herself. She had cleaned the shelter and arranged the space neatly. She offered him a small piece of dried plant, alien food she had kept hidden in her robe. He tasted it. It was bitter, but not bad. "You don't have to give me anything," he said. "I want to," she replied. "That is our way. Kindness must return." They worked together again that day. Callan showed her how to seal the edges of the metal panels. She, in return, showed him how to use crystal fragments to detect drone signals. He was surprised by her knowledge. "You were a mechanic?" he asked. She shook her head. "Scholar, studied stars, machines, and sound, Steen to the universe." Callan smiled. "That sounds like a good job." Scifi looked at him for a long moment. It was. Until the war came. That was all she said. But it was enough. Callan didn't ask more. He simply nodded and kept working. By evening, the shelter was complete. It blended so well with the rocks and cliffside that even from 10 feet away it was hard to see. It was simple but strong, built with care and with quiet understanding. "You're safe now," Kalen said, looking at the structure with pride. Scilarri stepped inside, touched the walls gently and turned to face him. Her voice was quiet but steady. No, I am not safe. But now, I am not alone. For Kalen, that was the best reward he could ever get. The days grew shorter as the planet's gray clouds thickened, casting long shadows over the rocky cliffs where Scilarri's shelter stood. Kalen visited every morning and evening, bringing fresh supplies and checking the small home he had built with care. Scilarri was growing stronger, but the fear in her eyes had not disappeared. One evening, as the sun sank behind the mountains, Kalen noticed something strange. Distant lights flickered across the sky, small, fast-moving drones patrolling higher than usual. Their sharp hum cut through the quiet air, making Kalen's heart race. "We are being watched," Scilarri whispered when he told her. Her voice was low but calm, as if she had expected it. Kalen frowned. "Why? Who would watch you here?" Scilarri's eyes darkened. "They know I am here. The Assembly's agents. They want to find me." Kalen remembered the stories he had heard, how the Galactic Assembly controlled many planets and kept tight rules. They did not welcome refugees, especially those who had been part of resistance or royalty on fallen worlds. "You mean they want to take you away?" Kalen asked. Scilarri nodded, slowly. "Yes, they fear what I represent." Kalen clenched his fists. "Then we have to hide better." Together they began to work on new defenses for the shelter. Scilarri showed Kalen a small crystal she carried in her palm. When she hummed softly, the crystal glowed faintly and sent out a strange energy wave. "This will confuse drones as sensors," she explained. "It hides heat and sound." Kalen studied the crystal carefully. It was unlike anything he had seen, but with Scilarri's guidance, he learned how to attach it to the outside walls. They worked through the night, weaving the crystal's energy with metal plates and solar cells. When the drones came the next day, their sensors failed to detect the shelter's heat or movement. The patrols flew by, their lights searching the cliffs, but no sign of life was found. Kalen smiled, proud of their success. But he knew this was only temporary. As the days passed, the bond between Kalen and Scilarri grew stronger. She taught him about her people, the Valari, who lived on a distant star system. The Valari were scholars and explorers, peaceful but proud. Scilarri's family had ruled their planet for centuries, guarding ancient knowledge and traditions. But the Assembly changed everything, she said quietly one night as they sat beside the shelter's warm heater. "They took my home, my family. I was forced to flee." Kalen listened, feeling a deep sadness. "Why did they chase you?" "Because I refused to obey," Scilarri said, her voice steady but filled with pain. "I spoke for freedom, for truth." Her words made Kalen respect her more. She was not just a lost refugee. She was a leader who had lost everything for standing up to power. One afternoon, a new danger appeared. Kalen had been out collecting supplies when he heard distant shouts and the sound of heavy boots approaching. Rushing back, he found a small group of colony enforcers standing near the cliffs, scanning the area with handheld devices. "What are you doing here?" one of them demanded, eyeing Kalen suspiciously. Kalen's heart pounded. He knew they were looking for Scilarri. "I'm just fixing a shelter," he said calmly. "No one else lives here." The enforcers exchanged looks, then one said, "We've had reports of unauthorized aliens near this zone. You need to come with us." Kalen shook his head firmly. "No, there's no alien here. Just me." One enforcer stepped closer, his face hard. "You don't want trouble." Kalen took a deep breath. "Neither do I. Please leave." The enforcers stayed a moment longer, then left with warnings. But Kalen knew they would return. That night, Kalen and Scilarri sat in silence, the shelter's soft lights glowing around them. Scilarri reached out, touching Kalen's hand gently. "Thank you," she said, "for your courage." Kalen smiled. "You don't have to thank me. No one deserves to be hunted." Scilarri's eyes softened. "You have shown me kindness when others only fear. Callan looked out toward the dark cliffs. We'll find a way, I promise. Together they prepared for what might come next. Callan repaired old cloaking devices from broken drones. Scifi taught him how to listen to the sounds around them, how her people could sense danger through tiny shifts in air and vibration. Their trust grew into friendship. In a galaxy full of strangers and fear, they found a safe place, together. The colony below the cliffs buzzed quietly with life. Shops closed earlier now, and patrols passed more often near the rocky edge where Callan had built the shelter. The strange light from distant drones still scanned the skies, but Callan and Scifi had grown skilled at staying hidden. Still, the danger was real. One afternoon, as Callan returned from gathering supplies, he noticed a small group of colonists whispering near the market. Their eyes followed him sharply, and he heard bits of their talk. That human with the alien, what is he hiding? Isn't it illegal to help them? Callan felt their suspicion, but he ignored it. His focus was on Scifi. When he reached the shelter, Scifi was waiting, sitting quietly on the mat. She looked more relaxed than before, but there was still a shadow behind her eyes. Do you hear what they say? She asked softly. Callan nodded. Yes. Some are afraid. Others judge. Without knowing, Scifi smiled faintly. Humans can be kind and cruel. Callan sat beside her. But some of us choose kindness. In the days that followed, Scifi shared something new with Callan, a way her people communicated that humans rarely understood. It was through sound, but not words. The Valari used subtle changes in tone and rhythm to feel each other's emotions. Scifi hummed softly, sending waves of calm and trust into the air. Callan listened closely and tried to copy her sounds. At first it felt strange, but slowly he understood. It was like music without notes, a way to connect beyond language. One evening, as they sat together, Callan said, "It's like you're teaching me a secret." Scifi laughed quietly. Yes, it is a secret of my people. Their bond deepened. She began to trust him more, opening up in small ways. She told stories of her home, a world of tall crystal towers and endless stars, of how her people valued knowledge and harmony. But she never spoke much about the war or her family. Then one night the worst happened. A fire broke out near the shelter. Callan woke to the smell of smoke and the crackling of flames. Someone had thrown a small incendiary device, a firebomb, aimed at the shelter's entrance. Callan rushed outside, heart pounding. Flames licked the metal walls and dry branches. Scifi was nowhere in sight. He shouted her name, his voice thick, with panic. From the shadows, Scifi appeared, coughing but alive. Her clothes were singed and her face streaked with soot. Are you hurt? Callan asked urgently. She nodded weakly. I am okay. They had no time to lose. With careful hands, Callan grabbed a blanket and wrapped Scifi, shielding her from the cold night air. The fire was dying down but had left the shelter badly damaged. We need to move, he said. Somewhere safer. Scifi looked at him with quiet determination. There is a place. I know. A place. Callan helped her walk toward the cliffs, following her lead into a narrow cave entrance hidden behind thick bushes. Inside the cave, the air was cool and damp. The light from Callan's small flashlight showed strange marks on the walls, symbols and lines carved long ago. Scifi's eyes brightened. This is my people's old sanctuary. Callan was surprised. Your people had a secret place here? She nodded. Long ago. Before the assembly. This place was hidden. They moved deeper into the cave, the walls glowing faintly with crystals embedded in the rock. Scifi hummed softly, and the crystals responded with gentle light. This is a safe place, she said. For now. Callan looked at her, feeling a mix of awe and hope. The cave was more than a shelter. It was a home from the past, waiting to be remembered. Over the next days, Callan and Sayalari cleaned the cave and set up a small living area. The walls were cool but protected them from the harsh weather and patrols above. Sayalari began to teach Callan more about her people's ways, their respect for nature, their love for learning, and their music that could calm storms or heal wounds. For Callan, the fear and danger still lurked, but he also felt something new, trust and friendship, growing stronger in the quiet cave. One night, as they shared a simple meal, Sayalari looked at Callan and said softly, "You have given me hope." "Not many do," Callan smiled. "You've given me a reason to keep fighting." Outside, the stars shone bright, and the galaxy seemed a little less cold. The air was thick with tension as Callan and Sayalari settled into the hidden cave sanctuary. The walls glimmered faintly with ancient crystals, casting soft light that danced over their small living space. For the first time in many days, Sayalari seemed calm. She hummed a gentle tune, a melody that had the power to soothe both her and Callan, but danger was never far behind. One afternoon, Callan went to gather supplies from the colony. The path was longer and more dangerous now, as patrols had increased, and the risk of being caught grew with every step. He moved quickly but carefully, knowing that every moment counted. When he returned, his heart sank. The shelter he had built near the cliffs, his first gift to Sayalari, was on fire. Flames licked the metal walls, smoke rising in thick black clouds. The fire spread quickly, fed by dry branches and plastic debris. It was clear someone had set it deliberately, hoping to destroy the refuge. Callan called out Sayalari's name, fear gripping his voice, but she was not there. He searched around, his eyes scanning the rocky cliffs and nearby bushes. Then he heard a weak cough from the cave entrance. Sayalari stumbled out, coughing and covered in soot. Her clothes were torn and her face was streaked with ash, but she was alive. Callan rushed to her side, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders. "Are you hurt badly?" he asked, worry thick in his voice. Sayalari shook her head slowly. "I am okay." The fire continued to burn, sending heat and light into the darkening sky. Callan knew they could not stay near the cliffs any longer. "We have to move," he said firmly. "It's not safe here anymore." Sayalari looked at him with a mixture of pain and resolve. "There is a place," she whispered. "An old sanctuary, beneath the cliffs." Callan nodded without hesitation. Together they made their way to the narrow cave hidden behind thick bushes, a place Sayalari had mentioned before. The air was cool and damp as they entered, far from the dangers above. Inside, the cave's walls were etched with ancient symbols and glowing crystals that seemed to pulse softly. Sayalari's voice grew stronger as she hummed a low note, causing the crystals to shine brighter. "This is my people's refuge," she explained. "Long ago they hid here when danger came." Callan looked around in awe. The cave was not just shelter, it was history, a hidden home of a lost civilization. Days passed as they cleaned and prepared the cave. Callan repaired what he could with scraps from his workshop, turning the space into a comfortable living area. Sayalari shared stories of her people's past, tales of wisdom, harmony, and strength. But even in this secret place, the threat was never far. One evening, Callan heard voices outside the cave entrance. A group of enforcers had found the area and were searching for signs of life. Callan and Sayalari held their breath in the shadows, hoping to remain unseen. The enforcers scanned the rocks with their devices, but the cave's ancient defenses and Sayalari's humming kept their presence hidden. When the patrol left, Callan let out a quiet sigh of relief. He looked at Sayalari, who smiled softly. "We are safe here," she said. "For now," Callan replied. Despite the danger, their bond grew stronger. Sayalari's trust in Callan deepened, and he found himself learning more about her people's unique abilities, how their music could calm tea, mind and protect the body. Together they prepared for the uncertain future, knowing that the galaxy's watchful eyes were still upon them. The cave sanctuary buzzed softly with new life. Small ships from distant stars had come quietly, bringing members of Sciolari's people, the Valari, back to their hidden home. The crystals pulsed gently, lighting the chamber in soft blues and greens as voices and music filled the air. Callan watched as Sciolari moved among her people with grace and strength. She was no longer the frightened refugee he had found by the cliffs. She had become a leader, a queen in exile who was ready to rise. One evening, Sciolari called Callan to the center of the sanctuary. "You have been brave," she said softly. "Without your kindness, I would not have survived. The Valari honor you." Callan shook his head. "I did only what felt right. Everyone deserves a safe place." Sciolari smiled. "Then you deserve to stand beside us." With a gentle gesture, she placed a glowing crystal in Callan's hand. It was a symbol of trust and friendship, an invitation to become the ambassador between Valari and humans. The Valari needed allies. The Galactic Assembly was still watching, still controlling many planets with strict rules. But now, with Callan's help, the Valari could build bridges instead of walls. News of the Valari's return spread quietly through human colonies. Some were surprised to hear that a human had helped an alien queen in hiding. Others were wary, still suspicious of outsiders. Callan knew there would be challenges. Fear and misunderstanding were powerful forces, but he also believed in something stronger, the kindness that had brought him and Sciolari together. He began reaching out to nearby colonies, telling Sciolari's story, not as a tale of fear, but as one of hope and friendship. Slowly, people listened. One day, a small delegation arrived at the sanctuary, humans and Valari together. They talked openly, sharing stories and ideas. Walls between species began to crumble. Sciolari stood on a crystal platform, looking out over the gathered crowd. Her voice was clear and strong. "We have been forced into hiding, but now we choose to stand together. The galaxy is vast, and there is room for all who seek peace and friendship." Callan stood beside her, proud and hopeful. Together they faced the future, not as enemies or strangers, but as allies. The galaxy was changing. What had begun as a simple act of kindness, a shelter built for a homeless alien woman, had grown into a new beginning. A chance for different worlds to understand each other, to share knowledge and culture, and to build a better tomorrow. Callan and Sciolari knew the road ahead would not be easy, but with courage, trust, and friendship, they believed anything was possible. Deep inside the hidden cave, the soft glow of crystals lit the walls, casting gentle shadows. Callan and Sciolari had made the place their refuge, but Sciolari seemed restless. She moved with purpose, touching the carved symbols, humming quietly to herself. One evening, as Callan sat repairing a broken device, Sciolari stopped beside him. Her eyes shone with a strange light. "There is more," she said softly. "A secret place. My true home." Callan looked up. "You mean deeper in the cave?" She nodded. "Yes. Follow me." Together they moved through narrow tunnels, twisting and turning. The air grew cooler, fresher, and Callan noticed the walls were smoother, covered with ancient designs that seemed to tell stories. After several minutes, they entered a large chamber. It was unlike anything Callan had seen. Tall crystal pillars stretched toward the ceiling, glowing faintly with colors that shifted from blue to green. Soft music filled the air, a sound that seemed to come from the crystals themselves. Sciolari stepped forward and touched one of the pillars. The music grew louder, more beautiful. She closed her eyes and hummed in response, and the crystals pulsed with light. "This is my people's sanctuary," she said, "a place of peace and power." Callan was amazed. "It's beautiful." Sciolari smiled. "Here, I am not a refugee. I am Valari, the true heir of my people." She told him how her ancestors built this sanctuary long ago to protect knowledge and culture from those who would destroy it. For centuries it had been hidden, forgotten by most, but the assembly took everything, Sciolari said, her voice low. "They tried to erase my people's history. Callan put a hand on her shoulder. But they didn't erase you. No, she replied. Because of you, I survive. Because of you, this place is not lost. They spent hours in the sanctuary. Sailari showed Callan how to use the crystals to send messages through the stars, a secret communication only her people understood. For the first time, Callan felt the weight of her true role, not just a homeless alien, but a queen in exile. Days passed, and small ships began appearing in the sky. Sailari used the sanctuary's beacon to call for help, sending coded messages to hidden members of her people scattered across the galaxy. One by one, they arrived, quietly, carefully, joining the sanctuary without drawing attention. Callan watched as the place came alive again. The cave was no longer just a shelter but a new home for a lost people. Sailari invited Callan to join them, offering him a place beside her as friend and protector. He felt honored and proud. The galaxy had once forced her into hiding, but now, through kindness and courage, she was rising again. Together, they prepared for the challenges ahead, rebuilding a future where her people could live free, and where humans and Valari might stand side by side.